What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with another You Got Boston live from the Xfinity Mobile Arena, the newly named arena here in Philadelphia, where the Celtics just won 109-108 to make it 3 straight wins and improve to 3-3 on the season. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about what's encouraging about this game. When I said that I was going to do an encouraging podcast after every game, I was thinking to myself, we might be headed towards a ton of losses and you guys are all about to start hating me. But now we've won 3 in a row. And I think this is actually making this podcast format a whole lot easier because this is probably what I'd be talking about anyways, because there was a lot of things to be encouraged by, despite the fact that this game was far from perfect. And there were a ton of mistakes, both to close that second quarter to blow a 24-point lead, but then also to almost blow a 10-point lead with 3 minutes to go. And they still stuck it out. And Jaylen Brown said after the game that the fact that they won that one, despite the missed free throws and the turnovers, is the sign of a good team. He was impressed by the fact that the Celtics were able to get key stops, one on Embiid, one on Tyrese Maxey down the stretch. And so they're able to pull out an ugly win. They had some great stretches of basketball in this game, which those stretches are becoming longer and longer. And at the same time, they also had some ugly stretches that were in part just new guys kind of figuring it out, and in part just NBA basketball. You know, you're up by 24 in the NBA these days. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be up by 24 for very long. And we saw them close out that second quarter pretty poorly. And I think it was a 17-4 run that the Sixers finished with. And then that only got worse in the third quarter. But they never let go of the rope. They never freaked out. And one thing that Joe Mazzulla said post-game that really resonated for me is individual guys struggled with their shot. You know, he didn't say this specifically, but Peyton Pritchard was 1 of 9. Derek White was 2 of 7 from 3. Like, those two continue to really struggle from the outside. And despite that, it felt like when they did miss shots or they did have poor offensive possessions that didn't have the desired outcome, it didn't affect their effort on defense. And I will attest to that. One of the number one things that I watch is when guys are in a slump, like Peyton Pritchard, we all know he's in a massive shooting slump right now. Derek White also in a shooting slump. And Freddie Simons was 7 of 21 tonight. So, like, none of your backcourt players are pleased with their shooting performance. I really didn't think that it was impacting their defense. So that was really encouraging to me, because when you think about it, like, these are guys that want to score, they work on their craft all summer, and now here they are, NBA Cup game, and they're all struggling with their shot. And so it's so easy to have that impact your defense, your focus, and it just didn't in this game. And so that was really impressive. And Jaylen said it himself after the game, like, that is a sign of a good basketball team, to be able to, you know, push through missed free throws and still win the game. Josh Minott misses 2 free throws, but he also grabbed the rebound that maybe saved them in this one, right? So Jaylen Brown had a missed free throw, a turnover down the stretch that he was frustrated with, and you could tell as soon as the buzzer sounded that he was kind of like, damn, I shouldn't have done that, and he needed to have been more composed, and he said that post game. But at the same time, he has an uber efficient night here, which he's continued to be extremely efficient all season. So they showed some resolve tonight. It wasn't like perfect execution, but it was the right intention. And I'm just impressed by, like, the fabric and the identity of this team. And I was feeling it through the first 3 games as well, but it just doesn't sound as good to say. And I know fans and, like, listeners are less receptive when the team's 0-3, and I'm like, they just feel like winners. They feel like they're connected and they're trying really hard. Like, there has not been a stretch through these 6 games where I felt like this team has not played hard. There really hasn't been. And so normally when I go through, like, these encouraging things, I focus on specific players. Like, I think I talked about Sam Hauser's defense or Pritchard's assist to turnover ratio. And those things are great. And I will continue to hone in on individual players and what they're doing well. But really what struck me in this one was, beyond, like, any one guy, there's just a culture of winning around this team. And I know they're a 500 team, they're 3-3, it's super early. They could still be a lottery team at year's end. Like, I don't know what's going to happen this season. Everybody knows here, I think, that I feel pretty good about this group, and I have them projected to win 45 games, still have them projected to win 45 games. But regardless of who's coming into the game, it's like they're bought into the system. They're bought into the swarming defense. They're bought into what this team is trying to do on both ends of the floor. And these last 3 games, they're also bought into rebounding, which is so important, because they literally were not rebounding the ball through the first 3 games. And we all know, like, you just don't win games if you can't get rebounds. Like, whether you're playing pickup at the park or whether you're playing at the NBA level, like, you got to get defensive rebounds to close possessions, right? Like, defense involves ending that possession, and they weren't able to do that. And now here they are routinely out rebounding opponents. These last 3 games, they have won the rebounding battle. And that's huge because it's making me think maybe they don't have something inherently wrong with the roster that is going to make them the worst rebounding team ever. Like maybe if Jaylen Brown and Neemias Queta and all these guys are completely locked in on that end, they can actually be pretty okay on the rebounding front. And I'll give a big shout out to Josh Minott, who, if you didn't watch this game and you just look at his box score, he had 2 points, 2 fouls, a block. He was 0-5 from the field. He was a -4. You might think like, okay, Josh Minott kind of stunk it up tonight, and he actually really did it. He had 8 rebounds in 22 minutes. 3 of them were on the offensive end, and when the buzzer sounded, he was all upset at himself because he missed those 2 free throws, and if they lost this game, he'd be kicking himself or, putting themselves in that position where what was a 1-point lead could have become a 3-point lead, and, he obviously didn't make any of those free throws. But Hugo kind of tackled him, swarmed him post-game. It was a really wholesome moment, and I asked Hugo about that and, kind of what he was trying to do there. And he was like, Josh is one of those guys that gives it 100% every possession, and he was a big part of why we won tonight. And that's all I was telling him. And as somebody who was watching this game and gets paid to analyze this game, that's exactly what I saw. I saw a guy that contributed to winning and is contributing to their rebounding solution as well. Joe said it's just guys are waking up in the morning deciding to rebound, but I also think that the Josh minutes have been huge for them on the boards. He's been one of their most consistent rebounders, if not their most consistent rebounder in his minutes. And that's something that I'll continue to expect from him because he's going to be their starting power forward, which is what it looks like right now. That's what they need. So my number one encouraging takeaway from this game is that this Celtics team is bought in. They're 100% bought in. It's felt that way from preseason. It felt that way from training camp. The way they talk about one another, the way they talk about Joe Mazzulla, everything that I've heard, everything that I've seen, it's guys are bought into whatever they have to do this season, and they want to win basketball games. And I know it's like, okay, but this is what people say. This is what players always say. It sounds good. It's October, and there is some truth to that. But at the same time, you have a guy like Jaylen Brown, who I mentioned this before, but he could be frustrated at the fact that this roster was kind of gutted in the offseason, and that maybe Tatum's Achilles injury made them feel like, okay, this is a year that we're not going to compete anyways. And instead, you see Jaylen Brown, he is really relishing this moment. He's relishing being a leader. He's relishing the chance to help guys grow. And you felt that tonight, I thought, in moments. And obviously, Jaylen's played well individually. He was, 13 of 19 from the field tonight, 32 points, had some, costly turnovers. It was not a perfect game for him, but more than just the on-court stuff, you can feel he's a guy that's bought in. Anthony Simons, could be saying, hey, I was traded by the franchise that drafted me. I was the leading scorer for the last 2 years, and now here I am coming off the bench. That sucks. And that's not at all the feeling that I'm getting from him. That's not what I'm hearing from talking to people. So that's hugely encouraging as well. So number one takeaway here is buy-in. Number two takeaway is they might have actually hit on some of these minimum guys. Nobody was super high on Josh Minott or Luka Garza, or Hugo Gonzalez, who was kind of a mystery pick, I think, for a lot of us late in the first round, because these guys were just not proven. I mean, all 3 of those guys barely played last year, including Hugo at Real Madrid. So how high can you be on players that are getting DNPs and kind of falling out of the rotation? But the thing that made me encouraged about them, and I think that this might resonate for you guys, it might not, but the Celtics have a better ability to select who their minimum players are than most teams in the league. And I know for a fact that Josh and Luka were priority signings for Boston. They really wanted them. It was not like it's late August and, these guys are still available and maybe we'll go out and get them because we need to fill our 12th and 13th roster spots. They wanted Luka Garza and they wanted Josh Minott, and they liked what they saw in limited minutes and they liked what they heard. And so for them to now be on the roster and to be contributing, it might surprise us because we haven't really seen them do these things on the floor. But this is why they went out and got them, right? And if you're the Hornets, or if you're, a team that's going to offer no minutes, which is what they've been in previous years, you don't have the same ability to go out and get the players you want. And I think that they had a pretty easy pitch this summer because on one hand, you're joining a championship culture, you're joining a proven front office, Brad Stevens, Joe Mazzulla, Jaylen Brown, you know what you're getting in that side. But then at the same time, there's going to be minutes, and there's going to be opportunities in a role, and that was not the pitch the last 3 years. And so I think they got the players they wanted, and now we're seeing that those players can impact winning. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like Josh Minott and Luka Garza are the greatest basketball players on earth. They're not. They both have strong flaws in their game. But Luka in his 15 minutes tonight was 4 or 5 from the field, 5 rebounds, 9 points. He was a +5. He gave them really, really good minutes. And Josh, as I said, like gave them good minutes, despite the fact that the box score is not going to jump out at you. And then Hugo, who was drafted late in the first round and is 19 years old and nobody really knew what to expect. He's been awesome for them. He was a plus 10 in his 14 minutes tonight. He fouled quite a bit. He had 5 fouls in this game, and I asked him about a post game. He said, I got to be better on those. But Joe loves this guy, and it's obvious why. How could you not when you're watching him just leave it all out there, possession after possession, whether it's diving on the floor for a loose ball or sprinting back on defense to try to get a block that is you have a 1% chance of getting. Like, he's a guy that I don't know that he's a hit as far as like I can't say for sure he's going to have a great career and this was the best pick in the late first round, but he's hitting as far as what they're asking him to do. And Joe and him had a moment where they were kind of patting each other on the back. It was a very wholesome moment. I posted it on Twitter. But it was very evident in that moment that like Joe was just like, you're doing a great job. Like, and he's only going to get better and he's only going to get more polished offensively. Although he did hit his 3 today, which was nice. 1 of 2 from 3, but he's bought into what Joe is selling. And it's not every team in the NBA where the head coach is preaching something and guys are bought in. And you're seeing that and you're feeling that, and they might've actually hit on some of these guys. And it's not going to be every single one. Chris Boucher was a DNP today. Baylor Shireman and Jordan Walsh, their last 2 first-round picks prior to Hugo. Or not, Jordan wasn't a first-round pick, but the last 2 top picks. Jordan was a early second-round pick. They're not doing much. So I'm not going to sit here and say like every single guy is playing out of their mind, but I do think some of where my faith in this team came from was this idea that I had faith that some of these guys were going to be impactful players, even though I didn't know enough about their games or I didn't see enough with my own 2 eyes to make me think that they were going to be great. So we're seeing a little bit of that right now. And it's, there's going to be some lulls. There's going to be some moments where Luka and Josh and, these other guys have really tough nights, but right now we're seeing that how at their best they can impact winning. And I don't even think this is their best. I think Josh Minott's a guy that's going to be better on most nights than he was tonight. But it's almost like their bare minimum is actually pretty darn good. Like their bare minimum is pretty impactful. Want to give a quick shout out to our friends over at PrizePicks. This episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. The hard-hitting football action is even better with PrizePicks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. I am super excited. I'm going to my first ever football game, so that's going to be a lot of fun. And I might choose somebody like Drake May, who is in the MVP conversation, to, select what is going to be more on his pass yards, more on his rush yards. Like, he is somebody that I'm particularly excited about right now. PrizePicks is simple to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get your picks right, you could cash in. Play PrizePicks to get action on football in more than 40 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the only app that offers stacks, meaning you can pick the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. Want to pick more on Drake May's pass yards, rush yards, and touchdowns? Now you can pick all of them in the same lineup, only on PrizePicks. Download the app today, download the PrizePicks app today, and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it is good to be right. So I mentioned before the break, the 2 things that are making me really encouraged right now about this team. 1, the fact that they found a way to win this game despite making a whole suite of mistakes down the stretch. And 2, that I actually think they hit on some of these minimum signings that were complete question marks, or at least they hit in the capacity of like they're doing what they were asked to be doing. They're playing hard. They're fitting into the system of this crazy, hectic, frenetic defense that is so fun to watch. And so I think they might actually be impactful winning players. And that's obviously what you hope for when you go out and sign 3-4 guys to minimum deals. You want 2 of them at least to become rotation players. And I think right now you're seeing that. The other thing that I want to say is there was a lot of question marks around Jaylen Brown as the number 1 option. I put that in quotations because I think that doesn't really mean as much as we act like it does. But obviously he's the guy that's getting the most attention from defenders. The 76ers were really physical with him today. He got frustrated. He got a tech. He said he deserved the tech, but he also feels like teams are getting away with a little much. I'll just say, from having watched Jaylen play his whole career, I think because of how strong he is and because of his build, players can do more as far as attacking him than maybe other players. It's not the only one. Like, I think somebody like Giannis deals with this quite a bit too, where if you hit Derek White on that same move, like Derek White gets the foul that Jaylen Brown doesn't. That's just my observation. I don't know if the data backs that up, but that's how he feels. So I think he should have gotten to the line more than 3 times tonight. He was 2 of 3 from the line in this game. So that's kind of wild, especially since the last 2 were the last 2 was actually on a jump shot. But I think that's a question mark. And he had 5 turnovers. That's going to be the biggest flaw to his game all season long. I think their turnovers are probably going to be higher than they have been in years past because he's handling the ball a little bit more, and now he has the best defender on him on any given night, which wasn't always the case last year. That being said, 13 of 19 from the field tonight, 4 of 7 from 3. He entered this game shooting 46% from 3, and he shot 57%. So he's like right around that range, a little bit below 50% from beyond the arc. And I think Jaylen Brown was heading into territory, being guarded, like the Warriors game last year where he was being left wide open from 3. And as a shooter, that is like your biggest nightmare, that teams are no longer guarding you. I try not to bring up my own basketball on this podcast too much because I was literally like a mediocre high school basketball player, so it feels like it should quite literally never come up in my basketball analysis. But I'll bring it up on this specific instance because I've just noticed him shooting with so much more confidence, and I don't see a technical difference in his shot. I mean, maybe he's elevating a little bit with more ease, and like obviously he's not having the knee issues that he was having last year, so like that could be related. But I've been wanting to ask him for a while, and I just haven't gotten to. And today I asked him about the 3-point shooting and the fact that he's shooting just below 50%. And he was shooting 32% last year on the year. So it's a massive jump. And again, it's not going to be 50% on the season, but early on here, he just looks better shooting. So I asked him about that. And he basically said that he is really looking for that 3-point shot now. Like in this offense, on this roster, that's a good look. And in the past, his mindset was more like, I'm going to drive. I'm going to get other guys to get open threes. And when you think about it, it's like Tatum was a better 3-point shooter than him for the last few years. Drew Holiday, Al Horford, Porzingis, like pretty much 4 of the guys that left the Celtics, outside of Luke, were all better 3-point shooters than him. And so them taking a 3-pointer was a better play than him taking a 3-pointer. And when that's your mindset and you're operating on the floor with that in mind, it doesn't do well for your shooting abilities. And so that's why it's always this question with like Pritchard right now, right? He's in a massive shooting slump. He's shooting like 18% from 3 on the season. And so you start to think like, is he doubting whether that's even a good look anymore, right? Like he's probably thinking to himself, I'm 7 of 8 from 2-point tonight and I'm 1 of 8 from 3. Like, should I even take this 3? And once that's in your brain, you start to miss shots. And that's why you see guys that just are in a slump and it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. Like what is a shooting slump? It's you lost your confidence in your own shot. It's not that you broke your wrist or you broke your leg and now you can't jump or you can't, do a follow through. It's in your own head. And it's remarkable when it happens. You see guys get in shooting slumps all the time. Derek White's in one right now. He was 2 of 7 from 3. He was 6 of 16 from the field. I've seen Sam Hauser get in some epic shooting slumps. I've seen Tatum get in some shooting slumps. I've seen Porzingis. Like it's kind of inherent to being a shooter. And the more you lose your confidence, the worse it gets. And I think with Jaylen, he hasn't had a good couple of years of 3-point shooting, but at the same time, he's also statistically knows that was not a good look for the team relative to other guys taking that same shot. So then that kind of compounds. And he said, I knew going into this year it had to be different because they don't have all those guys that can shoot threes. So now a Jaylen 3-pointer might actually be a pretty good look if he can get a clean one. And in turn, he's actually looking for that shot and he's feeling confident shooting it. It's not that he's actually taking way more threes now, but it's his mindset has changed. And so anecdotally, I'll just say I'm a mediocre, pretty inconsistent 3-point shooter. And I also play in a bunch of pickup leagues. And when my dad, who is an elite 3-point shooter, he's like an incredible 3-point shooter. Everybody that has played with my dad knows this. When he's on the court, it's like, I don't even look for my own shot because I'm like, I know he can shoot better than me. So I'll just find him and he'll hit a 3. Why would I take a 3 when he's a 50% 3-point shooter and I'm probably shooting 30%. And so I don't look for my shot. And then when I am wide open, it's like, I have to shoot it because otherwise what am I doing? And then I miss it versus when I play with a bunch of guys that I'm like, okay, none of these guys can even shoot. So I may as well hunt for my own shot. Now I'm hitting like step back threes and I'm like shooting really well. And it's literally just a mindset thing. So that's what I observed with Jaylen. I didn't want to ask him specifically that question because I don't like leading guys to the answer that I want, but that's actually exactly what he said. He said that, he's been hunting his own 3 and he's been wanting to take that shot. And so I don't think he's going to shoot. I mean, he's not going to shoot 47% from 3 on the year. Like that's going to go down. And again, like maybe in a few months, he'll actually be struggling and this was just a hot stretch. But I actually do think that there's something there and it's really encouraging and it's really interesting to see because if Jaylen's the kind of guy that can't shoot threes, that's a completely different career path, especially as he gets older, than whether he's a guy that can actually shoot 36, 37, 38% from beyond the arc. Like, that's a great sign for his longevity and also for the way he's going to be guarded, because now if he's hitting threes, you have to go out there and you have to defend him. And now he can do what he really wants to do, which is attack the basket and, get to his spot at the mid range. So I'll probably leave it there because we have another game tomorrow, and there's plenty of other guys to talk about, but those are the three guys. The three things that I really wanted to mention was the buy-in, the fact that I do think that they hit on some of these minimum guys, and then Jaylen's 3-point shooting, which continues to be hugely impactful. Actually, I'll say one more thing. Something that a couple of people have said now is that this team is doing really well as far as watching film, absorbing new concepts, and then translating those to things on the court. Jaylen said it. I asked him after, I think, the Pelicans game, after the first win of the season. You keep saying you're bought into these guys, but also this roster is like very unproven, right? So what makes you bought into them? And he said it's the way that they're absorbing information. You're seeing guys like Hugo, Josh, like these guys that are relatively young, inexperienced in the NBA. They're taking what they're learning in film and they're immediately doing it. And Joe Mazzulla said pregame, I asked him about like how he feels about the team, week in, and he basically said the same thing, that he's really encouraged by how quickly guys are absorbing things and actually doing them on the floor. So I'm not in the film sessions. I would actually kill to be in the film sessions, but I'm not in the film sessions. But it sounds like these are a bunch of guys that are quick learners, and the schemes are complex. It's always hard for guys to come into this new system. But there's so many new guys that they have to really teach it. It's not like in the past where Derek gets traded or X gets traded and it's like, you're the only new guy, so figure it out. We don't really have time for you to make mistakes because we're competing for a championship. Like, it's changed a little bit now. Like, there's a whole new system and everybody's learning together, and there's a bunch of new guys, and the whole coaching staff kind of bought into having to teach. And it sounds like from Jaylen's words and Joe's words, it's going really well, and we're seeing them winning games now and competing. And they were top 10 ranked offense and defense heading into tonight, and I would imagine that held 1-point win against an undefeated 76ers team. So that's it for now. That was actually a little longer than I expected it to go, but another encouraging game. 3-game win streak, 500 team, beat a team in the NBA Cup that was previously undefeated. I like the 76ers team. I'll just say that. I think they're going to have a good year, so if they can stay healthy. So we'll see about that, but another good win for the Celtics. Thank you, as always, for watching. Let me know what you thought about this win in the comments. I love when you guys say your thoughts in the comments. I should do better at responding, but if you're watching this on YouTube, leave your comments below. Like, subscribe. If you're watching this on Spotify, subscribe, follow, I don't know, tell your friends. But as always, thanks for watching, and we'll have more coverage coming Saturday night against the Houston Rockets at home. JD Davison revenge game. Some are calling it that. Some are calling it Kevin Durant. Welcome to Boston.